Hi, it's Nadirah with Fresh Fire International Ministries, welcoming you back for part 2 of our Wisdom Wednesday Nugget. So last week we were talking about the price for disobedience, the cost for disobedience. But as we all know, sometimes there is a price for obedience itself. So we're going to continue our story time, talking about Cheryl and some of the things that she has experienced. And so we left off last week talking about her second marriage and some of the things that she went through and how it wasn't God's will for her to even marry that man and some of the trauma that she experienced in that marriage. And so now we're going on. And so she ended that marriage with husband number 2. And at that point, she just pretty much gave up on men. You know, she didn't believe that there was a man out there for her. She kind of wrote all men off as just bad, 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 and lost hope in men. But the weird thing about it is that inside of her, her mind was saying one thing, which is men are bad. They've put me through too much. I'm done. But in her heart, all she could hear is that she would get remarried, that she would find love again, that this was not the end of her story in terms of relationships. And so there was like a battle there between the mind and the heart. And she stayed alone for a long time, healing, recovering from that abusive situation, abusive relationship. And in the beginning, it was almost like I've heard a saying of when you go through a bad situation, don't build a wall, build a gate, because a wall keeps everyone out, where a gate, you can regulate who can come in or out. Well, in the beginning, she built a gate. She built a wall. So she wasn't even aware, when she was out at church, working out with family, friends, whatever, she was not even aware if there was anyone around her that was interested in her, if anyone was trying to shoot their shot. She didn't care because her mind had her convinced that she was done. But that knowing in her heart just kept telling her, you will remarry. You will find love. And she stayed alone for 10 years, 10 years after that second marriage. And she finally was introduced to a man from one of her friends. And it started out as a friendship. She wasn't even thinking about anything other than that at that point. And they just hit it off. Their very first conversation ended with them praying for each other. And she's like, okay, I could get used to this. I like this. And they got to know each other. They were very caring with each other, respectful of each other. And she just kept waiting for him to change, waiting for him to become like the others. And she prayed and she said, God, did you send this man to me? Because he is like amazing. And in her spirit, the confirmation was yes. And so she just kept talking with him. And it was truly, it was happening the way, how should I put this? It was truly just strictly on an emotional level. There was nothing physical. but there was just such a deep connection. And she was just able to open up with him. She felt he created like a safe space in their relationship, and she was able to share with him, the things that she had been through in the past. And, at times when she would kind of like default to some of those defensive behaviors, he was patient with her. He was gentle with her. He was kind to her through those situations. And he just kind of pulled the layers back one by one, dealing with her to where she didn't feel like she needed to be defensive with him, or she didn't feel like she needed that wall up with him. She didn't need to be careful with him. She felt very, very comfortable with him. She felt supported with him. She felt loved with him. She felt covered with him. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful relationship. And it was both ways. And this man was a widower. He lost his wife and his child years ago, and them meeting, and they were just able to connect, and he hadn't met anyone that he had been able to connect with on the level that he was able to connect with Cheryl on. So this was reciprocal. And so they talked for about a year, and it was just happy. And of course there were disagreements, but the way the disagreements were dealt with, it was on such a much more mature and healthy level. They were able to just sit down and just really hash it out, and really just lay everything on the table. There were times when she would go and discuss things with him that, that would upset her. And he would say, okay, just tell me everything. Just tell me everything. And he would just sit back and let her just get it out. And it was just such a different experience for her. She felt happy. She felt like she met her person, and she felt like, she met her connection. This was it, she thought. And then the icing on the cake, God co-signed that he sent this guy. So she thought, wow, this is what I have been missing. And I am so grateful. It came to a point that she began to feel something in her spirit, kind of like, you're going to have to kind of move on, And at first it was like, okay, this truly could not be God, because this guy is like amazing. He's amazing. And God already told me that he sent him. So she battled with that for about a month or two. And finally, she prayed and she spoke with God. She said, God, is this, was this, are you telling me to move on from him? And she got the confirmation that God told her, this is not your spouse. And so she delivered the news to him. He was brokenhearted. He didn't want to let go. He didn't understand. She was brokenhearted. She didn't want to let go. She didn't understand. It didn't make sense to either one of them because they just fit each other so well, and they were just so happy with each other. And so she had to let go. And she made a decision. She had to make this decision. Am I going to continue to do things the way I have been doing them in the past? Or am I going to truly, at this point in my walk with the Lord, am I going to truly be obedient and do what he says do at all times, in all areas? I'm not going to cut off any area and say, Lord, this area right here, I can't let you control this. Or am I just going to truly surrender? And she said, Lord, I truly surrender it all. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense. I can't comprehend this. But I let go. I choose to be obedient. And so that's why, you know, we're talking about there can be a cost to obedience. You know, because sometimes people think, okay, you do what the Lord says, there's a reward. Yeah, there usually it will work out in the end. And she understands that. But sometimes the immediate impact is like, oh my goodness, what is this? This it's going to cost me this to be obedient? Yes. Yes, at all costs. There can be a cost for obedience. And so I wanted to share a scripture with you. In 1 Samuel chapter 15, it talks about the Lord rejecting Saul as king. And before I get into that, what came up in her spirit, as she was thinking about this situation and thinking about what she lost, and she knows that God has better for her and he knows what's best for her, but still it doesn't negate the hurt. It doesn't negate the disappointment. It doesn't negate that she's going to grieve this relationship with this man. But what came up in her spirit is 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 22, and it says, does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the son of divination, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. So, in 1 Samuel chapter 15, it talks about the Lord rejecting Saul as king. And, Samuel asked Saul why he didn't obey the Lord fully in the attack on the Amalekites. And God, he instructed King Saul to attack the Amalekites and totally destroy all that belonged to them. But King Saul took it upon himself to partially obey God's commands. He spared their king and the best of their livestock. And when Samuel asked King Saul about it, he said that he kept the best of the livestock to sacrifice to God. And in verse 22, we hear Samuel's reply to Saul. I went to commentary on this, and Pulpit Commentary says, Samuel accuses Saul of resistance to Jehovah's will and the determination to be his own master. With this mindset, he wasn't fit to be a representative of Jehovah and was dethroned. And so, and I was paraphrasing there. So Cheryl, and for some, you hear this story, it can almost be a little heartbreaking when you hear of a woman who's been through so much in relationships, and she finally meets this godly man, and he's wonderful, and he's good with her, and they fit each other, and they were happy together. And yet the Lord tells her to pull back. But obedience. Do I believe that what God is telling me to let go of? Do I believe that he has something better for me? Or do I believe that, for Cheryl, does she believe that he has something better for her, or that maybe he might want her to remain single? For some, that's a hard pill to swallow. But whatever it is, am I willing to be obedient in all areas? Am I willing to give up that thing that I have waited so long for, I've prayed so long for, I've longed so long for, I feel that I deserve? Am I going to be obedient in all things, even when there's a cost? There's something to think about. Something to think about. But in all things, even in Cheryl's situation, God is still good. God is still sovereign. God still, he still has a plan and a will for our lives. And Cheryl's story is still being written. So I may come back with an update on Cheryl eventually, and we may find out that what she had to let go of, what she was trying to hold on to, God had so much bigger plan for her. God had so much better plan for her, even though she thought this was amazing and she wanted to keep it. What he had waiting for her, because of her obedience, first of all, she was able to get to it, and it was going to blow her mind. So if I get an update on Cheryl, I will come back and update you to encourage you. But sometimes there's a price for obedience, but it's still better to be obedient. So I pray this blessed you. If there's anything that the ministry can do for you, please feel free to reach out to us at ffiministrieswithans.com. And please know that we love you and are praying for you at Fresh Fire. And we will see you next time on Wisdom Wednesday. God bless you. Bye-bye.